Hello, this is Steve Childress, spiritual life coach and spiritual practitioner. I'm here with Winter, spiritual practitioner and hypnotherapist. And today we're going to talk about astrology.
Yes.
But let's put the disclaimer out there now that neither one of us are.
Our astrologists, we know what we know. I've studied enough to understand the planets and the houses. And
And I would say that I'm sort of at the beginning stages of understanding the houses. I know the planets more than the houses. But I am in recent days realizing the energetic influence on our lives and with our experiences.
definitely. Would you consider astrology like a roadmap?
I would go as far as to say it could be described as a roadmap. It's certainly a way to get. It's a way to help me understand myself. Help me understand my energy and why I move the way I move in different circles. Um, I before I started studying or pulling my natal chart and so forth, I wonder. Sometimes I get frustrated with why I act a certain kind of way or why I get nervous around certain things and so forth. But reading a natal chart gives me a chance to kind of see how the planets are influencing me. And if this is the way it is, rather than trying to adjust it or whatever, use it to my benefit.
Definitely. That's an amazing way to look at it. 'Cause, yeah. How, based on when you were introduced to your natal chart, what advice would you give others, like, to look up? Like, what do you think they should look into first? Or, you know what I mean? Because astrology is a tricky subject. It's a lot to learn. And I wouldn't recommend for anybody, unless your goal is to be an astrologist, to, like, jump into that head first, trying to learn everything about everything. I think it's important to learn your astrology chart first. So what do you think was the most important part of your natal chart?
I don't know. I was prompted to pull my natal chart when I took an 8-week spiritual life coach program, Freedom is You,
Okay.
coached by Tasha Matrez. And it was, I think, because usually when you pull a natal chart and it has like a lot of explanations in it, I might not go through the whole thing. So usually I would focus on the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign.
Okay.
If people weren't going to like go in depth, that's where I would start. Now, if something like in recent days, when you could kind of, I don't know if people like are intuitive enough to like can tell when something is going on. Like if they can kind of tell like it's not just them, some of their friends are kind of going through something, that might be a time to look at the natal chart more in depth.
Okay.
Or like using like an app that talks about the various transits.
Definitely. The Pattern is a really good app. The Pattern is fun because you can add your friends and kind of link up, and you can look at the synastry between the two. Um, Also, for love connections, you can do the same. Also, co-star. A lot of people don't like co-star, but it does serve a purpose. Um, so yeah, I can see that. And Uranus and Neptune and Pluto are generational planets. So, like you mentioned, when like multiple people in your friend group are going through a similar thing, it's most likely because of that planet. Everybody in certain generations, people will have the same Neptune and Uranus. One is 7 years and one is a little bit longer. And what that means is like people for at least 7 years are going to experience similar things, but they may have it in a different house. So one may experience a challenge with home or a blessing with home, and one may experience the same thing with relationships from like their fourth or seventh house.
So do you think that when your friends like right now, with younger people, I can kind of notice, well, at least those relationships that I know of, there might be bumpy relationships or even just like real dysfunctional relationships, and sometimes I look at it like it's it's an ode to like the culture right now. But is it possible that some of the stars, some of the planets, have a part of it? And if so, if people understood those planetary movements, could they have healthier relationships?
I see what you're getting at, and I feel like I'm gonna take it like kind of away, but it's gonna come back together. I feel like it's case by case. I feel like it's situational for every single person. But in the sense that everybody, like even people born on the same day, have different birth charts. I know twins who are born 10 minutes apart. When I know that people always say like twins be like, we're two different people. And I heard them, but I never really like, I was like, sure enough, y'all the same goddamn person. Y'all birth chart probably identical, etc. I put their birth charts. When I say my mind was blown. One had everything in fourth house, which means he would want to settle down. He would want to get married. His relationships would be different. The other one, he had all the same stuff was in his fifth house, which means fun sex, which means fun. It's just different. And then like their seventh houses where they have the same moon sign, but they have different rising signs. One is a Scorpio rising and one is a Libra rising. Libra rising is hoe. That's the fifth house one. Like, it's just so interesting because I feel like the birth charts are putting challenges in people's houses and stuff like that. And it's the lack of them understanding themselves, which is leading them into unhealthy situations, because when you don't know who you are or know what you value and stand for, sometimes you'll accept less than what you deserve because you still just want to feel whole. And a lot of people don't feel whole alone, so they need outside people usually, because what you see is people want to be in relationships. Like we're not supposed to be alone, but at the same time, I feel like growing up we didn't get as much as we needed.
Yeah.
And that led to pieces in us being incomplete, and our birth charts didn't help because we specifically needed different things. Even every child in the house would have needed a different thing.
Right.
And if the parent wasn't aware of that, how could they provide that?
Yeah.
Because they're providing shelter, they're providing food and clothes, and they feel like, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, they're doing what they need to do.
That's what I know to do, because that's what my parents did. And so people just kind of raise their kids they try to just raise their kids the way they see other people have raised their kids. And it's very one size fits all, and people are not one size fits all. And that's why the younger generation looks so chaotic, because they lack guidance. But it's really because their parents didn't cater to the needs that they were born into. I feel like your natal chart is a reference point.
Right.
I don't think you're locked in, but I feel like, at least until you understand what's going on in your natal chart, you can't transmute, change, use it. You can't do much with it. So what that means is like, if I know my daughter, she wants to be an artist, and I'm like, cool. And when I look at her natal chart, the baby is going to be an artist. So for me to still push education on her, like in a super, super strict way, and not just appeal to her needs, don't get me wrong, education is still valuable. However, because I know that will never be her focus, it would be silly of me to try and make that her focus instead of just letting it be an addition, because that's all it'll ever be for her.
Yeah.
Based on how she chose for her life to go. And she'll have certain issues with certain things, and I'm aware of that, which means I can help her now. Jay actually offers a service where she'll put your child's birth chart, and she'll like give you affirmations for that child, because it's a few specific placements in your birth chart that'll let you know like the challenges you'll have. My son, I can love him like until I can give him so much love, but he'll still always feel like he didn't get enough love at home.
Yeah.
And that's just his perception. I can't change his perception, but what I can do is give him affirmations. I can make sure he understands his worth so that when he gets older, he won't fight himself so much when he's kind of at that age where he feels like he's alone, or you know what I mean? He'll at least know how to go back to himself.
Yeah.
One really cool thing I learned one day, or I like spiritually heard, was that people raise their children into who they expect them to be instead of who their children came here to be.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with everybody. So it's like, you know, my parents, they raised me to be who they wanted me to be instead of catering to who I was becoming at any changing point in my life. They were like, okay, this is your focus. Now let's adjust this focus to this and look at what else you need to fill these holes in. They were like, no, things happen like this. Let's continue. The generation under millennials, they are free spirits, because I believe that even though they pass through the womb, which is a portal in which you forget what you came to earth to do, I feel like they were only half erased, or they only half forgot. And somewhere in them, their soul's energy was stronger, and like their birth chart, I don't want to be wrong, but it's a piece of them that will not. My generation was millennials, start a pop. We were supposed to get stuff going. People was going to start talking more. It was going to be at a point where people would be conversating more about spirituality and things like that. The next generation, they were supposed to kick it off and basically make it take off and make it go where it's evolving to, and even further. And then the babies after them is supposed to really make other changes, because the path is already being made for them. And by the time they get to a certain point, they're going to kick into action and just be doing. The Gen Z, I think that's what they're called. Yeah. Okay, Gen Z, a lot of them babies got businesses. A lot of them know how to make money. They know how to get rich, which is half the battle. But they don't understand themselves enough to like take it all the way.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing they're missing. And I feel like the more that people get into astrology, you can learn these things. Like your 10th house is your career, your status, etc. And like every house is so detailed with what it stands for. The more you know, the more possibilities you have, I feel like.
Yeah. I haven't my natal chart goes down. It gives like a brief description of the houses, and then it tells me where my houses are.
Okay.
And what, how that may play out in my life. But I haven't sat down and read, and at the same time, this particular natal chart words things a certain kind of way, and other people might be able to articulate it better. But I did notice, I can remember having a conversation with my sister about when we were little and we were about to go back to school, um, my younger brother, when my mom took him to get new clothes for school, she could, she could get him some clothes, but he never felt like it was enough. And me, or like her, she was like my sister. She'd take her, and she'd be happy with whatever she got. And with me, it was like she was pulling teeth trying to get me to get clothes. Like I don't need any clothes. I can wear the clothes I got.
Where's your moon?
My moon is in Gemini.
Okay, and what house? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know.
It's okay. Your moon, though, is representation of your emotions, which people like to point out, but it also is indicative of your relationship with your mother.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I'm not as familiar with Gemini moons, but I'm a Virgo moon, which means my parents wanted me to be perfect. When you think of, because it gets simpler if you know what the sign represents.
Right.
So they wanted me to be like my mother. She wanted me to be perfect, and because of her, she was a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer. Like little things like that. Jay is a Capricorn moon, which means they would have a terrible relationship. And then my little sister, I don't know what her moon is, but they have a great relationship. And we all have the same mom and dad, and it's so different for each of us.
Right.
So your moon sign is very indicative of how your relationship with your mom is, as well as the house is important too, because it can show you how you'll deal with how you'll deal with your emotions, but indicative of the house, it'll show you how you'll deal with your emotions primarily towards this. This might spark the emotion, or it might contribute, things like that.
Yeah. I think when she was wrestling with me about buying clothes, I was like little. I was thinking about the family budget.
I'm about to look it up for you. A Gemini moon is adaptable.
Okay.
You have a unique charisma and enthusiasm attached to your personality. And then with all that Sag, that makes even more sense. You're logical and intelligent by nature, because Geminis are good at communication. They're logical. Individuals with Gemini moons, though, can be easily bored. They usually need stimulation, or they might have anxiety because things won't move quick enough. And Geminis, because I don't know good traits of Geminis, so this is one of the situations where I usually would mind my business. But you probably, do you like routine?
Yeah.
And
it depends.
It says you probably hate routines.
It depends on like in work. Well, yeah, I can see that, because like when I first started, years ago when I was doing accounting, I liked projects more than I liked the regular routine.
Because you don't like tedious and rigid.
Right. You
like, because you're a free spirit. And that's the Gemini and a lot of Sag. You don't want certain restrictions, but you don't mind doing a thing, Right. But it's like if it's tedious or, I don't know. You felt like your mom was extremely impressive and intelligent. It says her behavior at times seemed unreliable to you, but you admired her on an intellectual level.
I don't know. I know. Okay, so my ascendant is or first house is Capricorn, and I was reading that, and it was talking about like these folks like the dress and stuff. My mom worked at a retail store in the men's department. Okay. And she used to try to make sure we were fresh all the time. And when I moved away, I just kept that.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting. She was an educator,
Okay.
and I felt like she was an educator to us too, like not just educator, loving educator.
Mhm.
Um, but there were challenges growing up too.
Yeah.
So um, I could see with what you read
Mhm.
how it did feel like she fell off at a certain age where I was like, I still need, the love that you were giving earlier,
Mhm.
and even now I'm like, there are times where I like, I wish I had this, I wish I had this love I like, but I gotta shake it off because I got things to do, and it's not here right now. So, um, so I guess I could see that. I could see that in the stars, and then at the same time, I can see personally there are things that I personally have to deal with.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But so not that it makes it any less challenging.
Right.
Because everybody's challenges are different, and to some people they will not appear as challenging. Because if my mother was one way but your mother was another, that's one thing. And then two, our perceptions could be completely different, because our mothers could have been exactly alike and we still can have multiple perceptions, like you and your siblings and like me and my siblings.
Right.
Same parent, different perspectives of how that parent raised us. But when you're aware, I feel like I be going too far sometimes, but being a god or a goddess is a different level of responsibility. And when you understand who you are a little bit, even if you just scratched the surface, and came to the realization that you may be a god or a goddess, that's when you have to remember, like, maybe I'm not in a reincarnation cycle. If that is the case, I chose to come here, and I chose to come here for a reason. The challenges that I experience today are to help me to teach the younger generation for tomorrow. So the things that's why the natal chart is super cool to me, because it put me in a space where I could be like, all right, I chose to have an issue in this particular topic, but this is where I'm supposed to thrive. And that even goes back to like when people say pain power and things like that. And the thing that's really important to remember, if you're not in a reincarnation loop where this is just the lesson is the only thing you need to accomplish, it's like you got to take that thing, you got to become aware of your whole birth chart, your whole natal chart. I literally, like, I feel like you should physically write it on paper and then write out details that really stick out to you, whether you understand them or not, because you never know. Your astrology is shadow work, because that's just understanding yourself more. And some parts of yourself that you keep hidden are parts of you that are supposed to be there. Yeah. You chose that part for whatever reason, whether it was because you needed to see something from that perspective or whatever. But you pick your parents, you pick your life, you pick a lot of things that go on. And then when you get down here, it's really like some moving around you can do if you so choose. Because now that I know my challenge, I can choose to accept the challenge, defeat the challenge, get the blessings from Saturn, because Saturn is restrictions, which can be challenging. And but the thing is to be aware. If I wasn't aware, I couldn't defeat the challenge. I wouldn't even be in the game. I would be almost out the race, like the tortoise in the hare when the rabbit went to sleep. I would be like him, because I wouldn't know what I was fighting against. I wouldn't know what I was going up against. I would just know, wow, I'm being really inconvenienced right now. Wow, my whole life is trying to change. Instead of talking to experts You don't have to be an expert at astrology, and I do think it's important to like self-learn some things, but when you don't understand, I fully support going to a professional. There are astrologists for a reason. Somebody said you don't become a billionaire without an astrologist, and I can see that, because to reach a certain peak, you have to not defeat yourself, but you have to understand yourself fully.
Right.
To not, again, sabotage, like we were talking about last time. And then to not, life won't happen to you anymore. Like, it won't just be happening to you. You'll be in the driver's seat when you're more aware of the circumstances ahead of you or and behind you. I wouldn't even say like studying the transits are super important. It's enough people on YouTube and other places that'll explain all that to you in the moment. But knowing your basic, I feel like your sun is how, I forgot, but your moon is like your emotions and your relationship with your mom. Your ascending is how you actually present to others. So like, your sun sign, I think, is how you present to yourself. I forgot. But your Venus is how you love. Your Jupiter is where you will see expansion. I said Venus. Your Mars is how you fight, how you defend. What else? Saturn is the dad, and the moon is the mom. So it's Saturn. That's where you can see a relationship with your father. You can also see where you'll experience like a really big challenge for yourself. And it won't seem like a challenge to other people. Everybody will be like, you're so good at that. Why won't you just do it already, type of thing. And it'll be like, well, dang, because I'm not comfortable with that. But it's like, you got to get past that discomfort. You also have to figure out why it's causing you discomfort. And it's probably something that was programmed into you as a child that you pre-anticipated when you chose to be born. And then, you know what I mean? This is all choice. And then, what else? Uranus and Neptune, those are, again, generational planets. They show you, one shows you what will change a lot for you. And I forgot what the other one shows you. Your Chiron is your Achilles heel. It's your wounded place. It's like that sore. It'll never really heal, but it's there. But it's not infected unless you let it take over. So, like, to be aware of it is helpful, especially for your children, because you can implement it into them from the start that this is not a thing that can defeat you. You are stronger than this feeling.
Yeah, when I pulled my natal chart, this particular natal chart didn't have Chiron in it, and somebody, it was Tasha, was saying when Chiron went retrograde, that you should pull, that we should pull our charts. And when I read it, I was like, you ever seen that GIF of that old black man breaking out, start crying? Because it was like it read like my middle school experiences.
Oh wow.
And challenges I had to overcome as it relates to like speaking, publicly and being a communicator.
That's crazy.
What was I going to ask you? So when you were talking earlier, you were saying how we chose to come here. You also talked about how how there are people who like you and me walk with this understanding that we're incarnations of some divine energy.
Yes.
Do these like up until now we've been talking about how we're experiencing life and how that coincides with the stars and the planets. and how the better we understood ourselves with this information, the better we can understand our lives, like on a personal level. Um, we so that's part of how we are living our lives. Um, we may also have divine purpose or soul missions uh, that might be understood as cosmic. Like, you might have practical magic, trying to do different things, but you might also have cosmic magic, like there are roles
Definitely.
that you may have come here to do. Does the natal chart speak to any of that aspect, or are there hints? Is it possible that there are hints when it comes to like these other roles that we might have to play?
In my experience, I had to learn astrology. I know enough about it to do my job as a hypnotherapist.
Right.
So, and I usually get the birth chart a little bit ahead of time, and I look over it and I go through certain things. Now, there are karma planets where you might hold karma. To me, it's like a yes or no. It's like an undefined answer.
Right.
I feel like your Akashic records is more helpful in determining like your role and everything like that. However, your 10th house and your MC, I don't know if they're the same right now, but what I do know is that those tell you, the sign in the house tell you what careers you should look into, what careers you would be really good at.
Yeah.
I feel like stuff like that is very important because the career you would be good at is most likely to assist you in your role here. Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like a yes, but it's not defined. It's not like, oh, you should do this because you'll change the world in that way. You'll be dynamic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like, kind of though, if you look at it from a different perspective, because one of mine says politics. And I plan to get into politics, and I understand that I'm supposed to use my voice to make change. But I feel like knowing your purpose is helpful because then you don't really have to be so stuck into the structure of your natal chart because you can transcend above it. So the natal chart will always exist, but you don't have to agree with the terms anymore. After you're aware, you can change it, that law of knowledge. But if you're not aware, life is just going to happen to you. You're going to go the way you're going to go, especially being unaware. I was wondering, what sites have you used to look up your natal chart?
Astrology Cafe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Funny enough, before I was really into mysticism, I was an apprentice before I was in Freedom Is You. I was like an apprentice dropout. But in the apprenticeship, you get access to a shadow work course that she taught. And she mentioned to pull your natal chart. But I think even before that, I was a little bit into astrology because, like boys were born on certain dates. They had a at one point, me and Jimmy were both dating Cancers, and we were Scorpios. So, I'm a Scorpio. She's a Scorpio. But we would look up like the synastry on like Astro Cafe, and like a few times we had put our whole natal chart. But Astro Cafe is, I don't know. I haven't been on it recently, but I think it's a little bit trickier than Astro Seek. Actually, I feel like Astro Seek is a little bit more organized and kind of like detailed, where Astro Cafe is like overwhelming amount of information. You don't know where to start,
right, or
stop, or
that's why I answered that question the way I did about what to look for, because it was like a 22-page natal chart. It was explaining. So I was like, well, work with this, and if some things come up, keep reading,
And the format of it is tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I just was wondering. Yeah. But I think AstroSeek is a really good reference because the explanations are a little shorter, which makes it easy to digest. But AstroSeek should not be the only tool. It should just, I think, like a reference point, like a beginner point. And then from there, you go on to just research the specific placements and signs or whatever. There are a lot of YouTube videos for like audio learners or even visual learners. It's this guy, his name is Astro Finesse on YouTube. He's really good. I like his stuff. He really helped put my Saturn in perspective for me. And mostly because he shows you people who also have those signs of the specific sign you're looking up, and he just explains it really well.
And what were those apps that you mentioned earlier in the beginning?
Okay, so the pattern is really good. Okay. Also, CoStar is, they made a bad joke, and I'm gonna leave it there. But so a lot of people don't like them, and some astrologers say that they're inaccurate, but there are so many astrologers. There are so many methods of astrology. Some people use Western astrology. Some people use Placidus. Some people use whole house. Everybody has different opinions. So I feel like it's very important I think you should definitely look at your whole house and your Placidus, and also like your Vedic chart, VEDIC. And you can compare and contrast. I would start with whole house personally. But if you want to look, sometimes Placidus and whole house are different. Sometimes with whole house, you can only have one sign in that house. As to where Placidus will put you on a line. So it might be your 9th house, but you might have Capricorn and Sagittarius in the same house.
Right.
But whole house will be like, no, Capricorn is in the 9th house, Sagittarius will be in the 8th house, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah. Because one time I pulled my natal chart and the rising sign was Sagittarius, and then another time it was Capricorn. So I was like, what's going on?
But then in those cases, I would recommend, again, to check and make sure like it's whole or Placidus. I would look, honestly, this is a lot, but I would look through each and see which one I believe fits me more.
Yeah.
Because for some people, for me, my chart barely changes between Placidus and whole house. But Jay, on the other hand, her chart changes a decent amount.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to figure out which one you identify more with and go with that. And Vedic is going to be a little bit different too, because not as many astrologers use that. So in Vedic, I think my ascendant is Aries, which, yeah, interesting. But in whole house or Placidus, it's in Taurus, and those are very different.
Yeah.
So it just depends.
All right. Thank you, Winter.
Of course. That was a good talk.
Yep.